It was pouring rain, and he was just trying to finish his route when he saw her, a barefoot girl, standing on the highway in a torn hoodie, soaking wet and shaking. Something told him to stop, but he had no idea that giving her a ride would change both of their lives forever. What she did to repay him will leave you speechless. The rain pounded the windshield like 1,000 tiny fists as Marcus Doyle guided his delivery van along the nearly empty interstate. The world outside was soaked in silver, headlights casting long glows through the sheets of rain, trees dancing violently in the wind, and the city still miles away. It had been another long shift delivering supplies between rural towns, and all he wanted was a hot shower and sleep. Marcus was a quiet man in his late 40s, a former mechanic turned transporter. After the garage he worked at shut down during hard times. He didn't have much, but he was content. His playlist of old blues hummed low from the speakers, broken only by the soft swish of the wipers. Then he saw her, a silhouette on the shoulder. Small, still, a girl. No, a young woman. Soaking wet, arms wrapped tightly around herself, shivering beneath the streetlight that barely functioned. Marcus slowed, squinting. She looked no older than 20. Her clothes were thin and torn, a hoodie 2 sizes too big, and pajama pants that clung to her legs from the rain. No shoes, just bare, mud-covered feet planted on the asphalt, and her eyes. They weren't panicked, they weren't angry, they looked empty. He passed her, only by a few meters. Then he hit the brakes. His thoughts raced. Was it safe? Was it a scam? A trap? But something deeper, something older than fear, tugged at his heart. His mother used to say, "Sometimes your soul knows what your mind doesn't." Marcus reversed the van slowly and pulled to the side of the road. He turned on his hazard lights and stepped out, rain instantly soaking his jacket. "Hey," he called, keeping his voice calm, open. "You all right?" The girl flinched but didn't run. She turned slightly, revealing a bruised cheek and bloodied lip. Marcus felt his stomach twist. "I'm not gonna hurt you," he said, taking a slow step forward. "Just tell me if you need help." She finally nodded, once, almost robotic. Her lips parted, but her voice was barely audible. Can I get a ride?" Marcus looked at her for a moment before motioning toward the van. "Of course. Come on, let's get you out of the rain." She moved slowly, like every step hurt. Marcus grabbed a blanket from the passenger seat and wrapped it around her as she climbed in, water dripping off her like she'd just crawled from a river. "What's your name?" he asked gently as he got back in the driver's seat. The girl hesitated, curling into herself. Finally she whispered, "Elena." "All right, Elena, I'm Marcus. Where are you headed?" She shook her head. "Anywhere that's not here." He didn't ask more. He didn't need to. Her silence told him more than words could. They drove for a while without talking. Marcus handed her a bottle of water and a packet of crackers. She devoured them silently, eyes never lifting. He turned up the heater, watching her tremble less, as the warmth filled the space. When they reached a small 24-hour diner outside a sleepy town, Marcus pulled in and killed the engine. The neon open sign flickered faintly in the window. "Let's get you something warm to eat," he offered. Elena's eyes widened. She hesitated like she couldn't believe the offer was real. I don't have money," she mumbled. "I didn't ask for any." For a moment, she just stared at him. Then she nodded. Inside, the waitress raised an eyebrow at the soaked girl in the oversized blanket, but Marcus gave her a sharp look that silenced any judgment. They sat at a booth in the corner. He ordered 2 bowls of soup and grilled cheese sandwiches. As they waited, Marcus finally asked, "Do you have anyone to call?" "Family?" Elena looked down. Her fingers gripped the edge of the table. "No," she said flatly. Marcus nodded slowly, not pushing. Instead, he offered a tired smile. "Well, tonight you're not alone." When the food came, Elena ate slowly, savoring every bite. Her hands stopped trembling. Her shoulders dropped a little. "Thank you," she whispered at last. "For everything," he shrugged. "Just doing what's right." She paused. "Not many would." Marcus sipped his coffee. "Then maybe the world needs more stubborn fools like me." That made her smile, barely, but it was real. And in that smile, Marcus saw someone still fighting, even if just barely. After the meal, Marcus led her back to the van. He handed her a fresh hoodie from a supply box in the back, along with clean socks. She changed in the diner restroom while he called a friend, an old acquaintance who ran a small shelter nearby. "She can stay there for the night," his friend said. "We'll take care of her after that." Elena hesitated as he explained, "Why are you doing all this?" She asked. Marcus looked at her and replied quietly, "Because once, a stranger did the same for me." Later that night, as he dropped her off at the shelter, Elena turned before stepping out. "I don't have anything to give you," she said softly, ashamed. "You already gave me something," Marcus said, smiling. "What?" "Reminded me why I don't stop being kind." She nodded, eyes shining. Then she stepped out of the van and into the soft lights of the shelter. Marcus drove off into the night. Rain still tapping against the glass, but something in the world felt warmer. What he didn't know then was that this one small act of kindness would return to him in ways he never imagined. The next morning, sunlight spilled across the shelter's windows like a silent promise. Elena awoke not to shouting, not to sirens or thunder, but to the scent of cinnamon oatmeal and the soft rustle of linens. For a second, she didn't know where she was. Then she remembered the van, the warmth, the man with kind eyes and a gentle voice. Marcus. She sat up slowly in the unfamiliar bed, still wrapped in the hoodie he'd given her. It smelled faintly of motor oil and something else, comfort, maybe. The shelter room was simple, 2 bunks, white sheets, and a faded poster on the wall that read, "You are not the sum of what happened to you. You are what you choose to become." Elena stared at the words for a long time. Downstairs, she met Laura, the shelter manager and Marcus's old friend. Laura was a broad-shouldered woman with frizzy red curls and a voice like warm thunder. "You're Elena, huh?" she said, eyeing the girl over her coffee. "Marcus told me you'd come through looking like a storm cloud had chewed you up. You don't look so bad now." Elena's eyes dropped, used to the sting of casual judgment, but when she glanced up again, Laura was smiling. "I mean that in the best way, sweetheart. You've got some fire left. That's rare. Let's see what we can do with it." Elena didn't smile, not yet. But she nodded. That day, she showered for the first time in weeks. She stood beneath the hot stream for so long her skin turned pink. She scrubbed her face raw, like she was trying to erase the fingerprints of her past. When she stepped out and saw herself in the mirror, it wasn't a stranger staring back anymore. It wasn't the broken bride. It was someone in between. Later that week, Marcus returned. Elena had just finished folding towels at the shelter's laundry station when she heard the familiar rattle of a van engine outside. She hurried to the window and saw him, still in his flannel shirt, worn jeans and calloused hands that looked like they'd lifted lives heavier than cargo. "You're still here," he said, surprised. "Yeah," Elena replied. "They haven't kicked me out yet," Marcus chuckled. "I didn't think they would. Laura doesn't waste time on lost causes. Then why am I here?" she asked quietly. Marcus tilted his head. "Maybe you're not lost, just waiting to be found." The visits became regular. Every week or so, Marcus would swing by the shelter when his routes allowed. Sometimes they just sat on the porch and sipped iced tea. Sometimes he brought her old books from truck stop bins, poetry, travel journals, even a battered copy of To Kill a Mockingbird. Elena devoured them like fuel. And one rainy afternoon, when the clouds seemed to press heavy against the earth, She finally told him the truth. My mom died when I was 11. Car accident. No father in the picture, she began, voice tight but steady. I bounced through foster homes, then aged out. I tried to make things work. I cleaned houses. I worked at a gas station. Then I met him. Marcus didn't interrupt. I thought. He loved me, Elena continued. He said all the right things. Promised me safety. A future. I was so tired of surviving, I believed him. We were supposed to get married. She looked down at her hands, but it was all a joke, a dare with his buddies. I found out the night before the wedding. I begged him to stop. He laughed. Said no. One would believe a homeless girl with no family and no past. Marcus clenched his jaw. I ran, she said, eyes now shining. Right out of the motel, no money, no phone. Just the dress I had on. I didn't want to be found again. You weren't, Marcus said after a long moment. You were seen. That night, Elena couldn't sleep. She sat on the porch of the shelter, the stars a scattered symphony above her. Her thoughts were, loud, what do I do now? Then she remembered something Laura had said days earlier, half in jest. There's a community college down the road. They don't bite, usually. The next morning, Elena asked for an application. A month passed. Then Elena started classes. GD prep first. She worked at the shelter part-time, sorting donations, sweeping halls, reading in the break room during lunch. She laughed again. She made a friend named Ava, a single mom with a sassy baby girl who drooled on everything. And she smiled real smiles, but most importantly, she never forgot who helped her start again. One afternoon, she stood waiting by the shelter entrance with a brown paper bag when Marcus's van pulled up. She climbed in and handed it to him. What's this? He asked. Your favorite, meatloaf sandwich and a cherry cola, she said, trying to look casual. He grinned. You trying to butter me up? No, she said. Then after a pause, just repaying a little kindness. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Kid, you don't owe me anything. Elena looked at him then, really looked, and said softly, maybe not. But I want to. That's the difference. That night, Marcus parked his van beneath the stars, staring at the sky with the sandwich half-eaten in his lap. For years, he had delivered boxes, repaired engines, and drifted through towns like a man without a destination. But helping Elena? That felt like something he couldn't label on a manifest or logbook. That felt like purpose. Asterisk. The coffee shop buzzed with quiet conversations and clinking mugs. But all Elena could hear was the pounding of her own heartbeat. She sat in the corner booth, biting her bottom lip, the steam from her untouched drink curling into the air. On the table in front of her lay something she never imagined she'd have again, a student ID, her name printed neatly beneath a smiling photo of her wearing borrowed clothes and still healing confidence. Tulsa Community College. Full-time enrollment. Major, Human Services. She ran her fingers over the ID like it might vanish. It had been 6 months since the night she climbed into Marcus's van. 6 months since her past shattered, her pride bled, and a stranger became a bridge between broken and brave. She didn't understand why he'd stopped for her, still didn't. But she knew she was no longer the same girl in the rain. She was becoming someone new. Marcus was late. He usually wasn't. His routes were like clockwork, gas stations at dawn, diners by noon, shelter visits before dark. He was never fancy, never fussy, but always on time. So when 10 minutes turned into 20, Elena's nerves twisted. Then her phone buzzed. Marcus, sorry kiddo. Small detour. Be there in a few. Got something for you. Asterisk. She smiled despite herself. Marcus had a way of making detours feel like destiny. When his van pulled up outside, Elena was already at the curb. He leaned over and popped the door open. Get in, college girl. She grinned and climbed in. Where are we going? You'll see, he said with a wink. The van rumbled out of town, past the last gas station, past the rusted fence lines and grain silos. Elena watched the landscape roll by. She had come this way before, but it had never looked like this. Open, alive, full of possibility. They pulled off onto a dirt road that curved through a field of tall yellow grass. "Elena," Marcus said. Suddenly, his tone more serious. "What do you want to do after school?" She blinked. "I mean, I want to help girls like me. Runaways, survivors, give them somewhere safe to land." Marcus nodded, like he'd expected that. "Good. You're gonna do more than help, though. You're gonna build." "Build what?" Instead of answering, Marcus parked in front of an old vacant property. A 2-story house with chipped white paint, crooked porch steps, and windows covered in dust. A "for sale" sign leaned awkwardly in the weeds. Elena stared at it. "What is this?" Marcus got out, motioning her to follow. "It used to be a daycare," he explained. "Then a halfway house. Been empty the last few years." He reached into his back pocket and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. "Deed's in my name now." Elena's mouth opened, but no sound came. "I've been saving," Marcus continued. "Never had kids. Figured maybe my purpose wasn't to raise one. Maybe it was to raise many. With help." He turned to her. "With your help." Inside, dust floated like snowflakes in the sunlight. The walls needed scrubbing, the floorboards creaked, and the wallpaper peeled at the corners. But Elena could already see it. Cots lined up in the bedrooms, posters with quotes on the walls. A kitchen that always smelled like soup. Laughter echoing down the hallway. Girls sitting at the table, not hiding, not ashamed. Just safe. Tears slid down her face before she could stop them. "You want me to help run this?" she asked in a whisper. Marcus smiled softly. Double quotes, "No. I want you to own it one day." They called it the Haven. Over the next few months, with help from volunteers, friends from the shelter, and a small grant Laura helped them apply for, the Haven slowly came to life. Marcus handled repairs and logistics. Elena worked after class, organizing, planning, studying nonstop, learning how to manage people, trauma care, licensing. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was leading. Girls began to arrive, quiet at first, then curious. Some barely spoke, some screamed at everything. Elena welcomed them all with the same open heart Marcus once gave her. She remembered their names. She left notes on their pillows. She cooked meals when the cook didn't show up. And when no one else knew what to say, she sat quietly with them in the dark because she understood. Each girl was a version of her. Each one a reminder that she was no longer just the girl in the torn wedding dress. She was the girl who stayed one evening. As twilight poured orange light through the windows, Elena stood in the old living room, now repainted, refurnished, reborn. She gazed at a framed photo on the wall, her and Marcus standing in front of the Haven, holding a grand opening banner, both grinning like kids who'd built a treehouse too big for their backyard. Behind her, a soft voice said, "You look tired." Marcus stepped into the room, wiping grease from his hands. "I'm exhausted," she laughed, "but good tired. The kind that means you're doing something that matters." He nodded. They sat on the porch for a while, watching the wind move through the tall grass. "You know," Elena said quietly, "I spent so long thinking I had nothing to offer. But I was a mistake. And now I get to make sure other girls never feel that." "You turned pain into purpose," Marcus said. "Not many people can say that." She looked at him. "You saved me, Marcus." He shook his head slowly. "No, Elena, I just gave you a ride. You did the rest." As stars blinked to life above them, Marcus leaned back and smiled. He didn't know how long he had left on the road. His knees were getting bad. His back ached more than it used to. But looking at Elena, this brilliant, fiery, healed soul, he knew something for certain. He hadn't just delivered goods. All these years, He had delivered hope. 5 years. That's how long it had been since Alina stood barefoot in the rain, abandoned in a tattered dress with nowhere to go. 5 years since a stranger in a creaky delivery van pulled over and offered her something more powerful than a ride: dignity. Now she stood before a crowd of over 100 people, her palms trembling. Around the edges of her speech, a banner fluttered behind her: The Haven, 5-year anniversary gala honoring lives reclaimed. The room was warm, decorated with strings of light and handmade art from the girls who lived at the shelter. Laura sat front and center, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. The girls, her girls, sat in rows, smiling, some proudly wearing dresses for the first time in their lives. But Marcus wasn't there. And that haunted her. 2 months earlier, Marcus had shown up to the Haven with more grease on his hands than usual. His cough lingered longer. He waved it off like he always did. "Just old man stuff," he'd muttered. "Rust never sleeps." But it wasn't rust, it was lung cancer. He hadn't told her. Not right away. She found out from Laura. "He didn't want to be a burden," Laura had said softly. "He wanted you to stay focused on the girls, not worry about him." But Elena did worry. She visited him in the hospital every week after that, sitting beside his bed, reading aloud the letters the girls wrote for him, their drawings taped to the sterile walls like bright rebellion against the beeping monitors. "You know," he whispered once, smiling weakly, "you've already repaid me 1,000 times over." She shook her head. "Not yet." Back at the gala, Elena stepped to the podium and took a breath so deep it shook her shoulders. The crowd fell silent. "I don't have a speech," she began. "Not really." People chuckled gently, leaning in. "I have a story. One I thought would end the night I ran away. The night I was left in the rain with nothing but shame, a ruined dress, and no one to call." She paused, eyes glossy, but someone stopped. "A man I didn't know. He gave me a blanket, a sandwich, a seat in his van. But what he really gave me ... was a beginning." She turned and looked directly into the camera being live-streamed. "For Marcus Doyle didn't rescue me. He reminded me that I was worth rescuing." Gasps echoed softly around the room as the screen behind her lit up, a video feed from the hospital. There was Marcus, in a wheelchair, eyes tired but gleaming. A nurse stood beside him, holding a tablet, guiding the stream. Alina smiled through her tears. "I told him I'd repay him one day. So I did something." She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a thin white envelope. 6 months ago, I secretly started the paperwork, transferred the deed, signed the necessary papers. And as of today," she turned the envelope toward the screen, "the Haven no longer belongs to me. It belongs to him, officially, legally, forever." The crowd erupted in gasps, applause, and even sobs. Marcus covered his mouth on screen, completely still. "You gave me a roof when I had none," Alina said, her voice thick with emotion. "Now I'm giving you a home built with the lives you helped rebuild. This place, this mission, will always carry your name." They called it Doyle Haven for Girls. Weeks later, Marcus passed quietly in his sleep. Elena was by his side, holding his hand. She whispered her last promise to him as he breathed his last breath. "I'll keep driving now." 6 months later, the Haven was alive with new energy. Elena, now officially the director, stood outside, watching 2 new girls arrive. One was only 14. The other just turned 19. Both carried the same hollow look Elena once wore like armor. She smiled and welcomed them inside. That evening, after all the girls were settled, she stepped out into the fading light, a new volunteer. Application in her hands. She had no idea someone had applied until Laura emailed it to her. She opened the folded form and froze. Name: Maya Doyle. Relation to resident. Niece purpose: I want to continue what Uncle Marcus started. Attached was a handwritten letter from Maya. He told me stories about a girl named Elena. He said she reminded him that one act of kindness can rewrite a lifetime. I want to carry that torch now. I want to help more girls believe in second chances. Tears spilled freely down Elena's cheeks. That weekend, a new plaque was mounted beside the main entrance, in memory of Marcus Doyle, a man who didn't just stop for a stranger. He stayed long enough to change her life. Final scene: late at night, Elena sat alone on the porch of the Haven, stars scattered above. Her knees tucked to her chest. She watched as a single van rolled past on the distant highway, headlights fading into the horizon. She closed her eyes and whispered, "I hope someone else stops tonight." Because now, she wasn't just the one who had been rescued. She was the one who knew what it meant to pull over. The end.